DM Stories. This is a scenario that cropped up recently in one of my games. It was a relatively simple scenario. The player characters needed to buy a wagon and 4 horses to travel to the next area to complete their task. Now, there were some plot points going on with those 4 horses, so I was a little bit taken aback when the Warforged told me that he was only going to buy the wagon because they didn't need the horses. He could pull the wagon himself. Now, at this point, I should have stopped and just let things go and said, okay, well, how are you going to go about doing that? Because it's not like the player was giving any kind of role play of how he was going to rejigger the 4-horse wagon into being pulled by 1 creature rather than 4. He just kind of said, the rules say I can do this, and thus I'm going to do this. As a good DM, I should have given myself some sort of time to think this through, but instead I just sort of said, well, I mean, the wagon in my game is different than the wagon in the book, which only has 400 encumbrance. Eventually he got angry and said I was taking away features from his character race, and I was changing the rules, and that was unfair. And he quit the game soon after that. All in all, that was probably a good thing, because we were playing very different games. Let me go into detail about how this misunderstanding happened, and what I'm going to try to do in the future to avoid similar scenarios. Unearthed Arcana. Honestly, this was probably my first mistake. I know a lot of DMs don't like using Unearthed Arcana, and I'm starting to understand why. A lot of players just don't get that there's going to be some squirrely stuff in there that just doesn't make sense with the rest of the rules, and obviously that's what happened to the Warforged. The idea of a Warforged as this perpetual motion machine that can just do anything without rest ever, like it's just, it was a dumb concept, and guess what? In the actual book that was released, those rules aren't there anymore. So yeah, the idea of using Unearthed Arcana in a game, I guess if you are really clear with the player and let them know, hey, are you going to try to do some really specific thing with this untested rule set? Because if you are, let me know in advance, because it's really not fair to the rest of the players if you're doing some bizarre stuff at level 3 that, you know, the equivalent of what the other players can do, they would have to wait for like level like 10 or whatever to do the kind of equivalent stuff that you're doing here. So, Number 2, the D&D rules in 5e about travel and encumberment and all that stuff, they're pretty light. So, it's just like, you know, you really have to make it up in the role play. As far as I'm concerned, that's a personal preference. So role playing is very important when you're talking about like traveling, because, for example, in the official rules, there's literally no difference in travel time if you are walking compared to traveling on a horse or a riding horse or a cart or anything. And that, you know, that doesn't really... So you, as far as I'm concerned, you really have to kind of supplement that with role-playing, so you can't just approach a simplified situation like this, at least in my game, and just say, okay, the rules, because they're dead simple, just allow me to do this. You have to kind of encourage your players to role-play a little bit to make it, you know, somewhat interesting, at least according to me. So again, some of the rules in 5e are very simplified. You know, but there's a lot of homebrew out there, so that might be something I should consider in the future to apply to my personal game. And finally, 3, the optional feats, which was also the situation here where he took a feat which will allow him to act like a large creature instead of a medium creature and allow him to pull and push more and whatnot. And I don't remember him ever asking permission to take that feat. He might have. But again, this is something as DM I need to pay attention to, because in the future, I mean, there's just so much like just ridiculous nonsense. WebDM, I believe, did a great video on that where they were talking about how people can go online and read about like the best stuff to use and whatnot and come up with all this convoluted nonsense to do stuff. And it's just like, it's fine, but like as a DM, you got to be aware if one of your players is doing that. So again, I don't remember him asking me, which in the actual rules, in the official rulebook, talking about not allowing people to go by the rules, the official rules say you have to ask your DM permission to use the optional feats. And yeah, it's absolutely crucial that you kind of pick up on this stuff as you go. And again, yeah, so I think that leads into my final point. There's only so much communication can do. You have to find players that are, compatible with your game. And again, I felt really bad about this, but then I went to the MaceCon, and again, I played in multiple games where there were, just wonky characters and everything like that, but none of them were disruptive to the game. And again, I got a lot of really good compliments about how I ran my game and how I was a really good player. But yeah, I think there was just a general understanding there that it was about, kind of more of a teamwork situation than that. And yeah. The recent interview with Joey Mangs reminded me that there's a real difference between a power gamer and somebody who is going to literally mix and match rules from under Arcana and optional rules to get like a weird abilities that nobody else has. And a power gamer, I think, still has the opportunity to work with the other players and have fun in a game like mine, but I don't think the other player ever would. So I think the final thing is, I'm just going to be more choosy when it comes to people I'm inviting into my games, and to try to be. I thought I was being as clear as possible with my communication, but perhaps next time I'll be super clear. That if you want to sit at home and look on the internet and use a bunch of alternate rules to craft some abomination of a character that can do cool stuff, but it's just because of what the rules allow you to do. I mean, I would rather have all the cool stuff that happens in my game happen during the actual game. So power gamers, they might be able to have fun at my game, but I don't think the other player ever will. So I think it's best for all if I'm just more clear and more choosy of my players in the future. I hope I explained that scenario clearly and concisely. If you have any questions about that whole mess, please let me know in the comments below. I will also link where I got those miniatures, those cheap, good miniatures, in the end cap for this video. On a sad note, unfortunately, we have lost our sponsorship to the 99 restaurant and pub. So yeah, that's a real blow. They've always been a very good supporter of this channel. And I love the place too. Obviously, the entrees for $9.99. They've always given us such support, and I know everybody loved the commercials that we always used to do on the Blandco channel with them. So unfortunately, those are all going to be scrubbed now from the channel. And once again, this channel is not sponsored anymore. So I know this is going to be a big disappointment to everybody, and again, I can't blame them. They're a great restaurant. I just wish they would have kept up the financial support, but these things happen. So once again, thank you to 99, the restaurant and pub, for all of your past support, and maybe hopefully in the future they'll come back as a sponsor.